Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Carnivorous Grandma Speaks. My name is Robyn Herron, and I am your carnivorous grandma, back for another episode of Carnivorous Grandma Speaks. First of all, I want to say welcome, you guys. It's been a few weeks since I was on for this particular conversation, so welcome back to this show. I am streaming live on Facebook and YouTube and TikTok tonight. So if you wouldn't mind, drop in where you are watching from down in the comments. That would be absolutely amazing. I'm trying to make it so I can see. So good to see you. Good to be back with you guys again tonight. And I go live typically every Saturday night at 5:30 p.m. either for my show Coach's Corner, which is on YouTube and Facebook, or for Carnivorous Grandma Speaks. I also go live on Monday nights for Hey Sister Girl, which is typically streamed on Facebook and YouTube. So, guys, catch me over there if you're interested in those shows. Again, my name is Robyn Herron. I am a certified metabolic health coach. And tonight I want to talk about a topic that has been really, really on my heart recently. And I think that parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, any kind of caregivers need to start thinking about this topic. And that is that our kids are struggling with metabolic syndrome. And how do we recognize that? And what do we do about it? So, my question for you tonight is, first of all, let me know where you watch from down in the comments. And I'm happy that you're here. But the question that I want to ask you tonight is, how do you know if your child, grandchild, niece, nephew, friend, neighbor is metabolically healthy? Somebody that's a kid, right? When you look at them, can you tell? Is it because they're not overweight, or maybe they play sports and they're very active? Maybe they haven't been diagnosed with diabetes. Maybe even on their labs, their blood sugar came back normal at their last physical. So those things can tell us something, but they don't really necessarily tell us the whole story, because metabolic dysfunction can begin developing long before someone receives a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes or even prediabetes. And we are seeing many metabolic problems in children these days that many of us grew up thinking of as adult diseases. And they're appearing in our kids, in our adolescents, right? So what we're talking about tonight is insulin resistance, high blood pressure, abnormal triglycerides, and fatty liver disease. We're looking at prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And these are not conditions that we want our kids to begin to be in childhood with, right? Or go into adulthood with. I wanted to mention that I recently watched a video, and I was trying to find it so I could show a little clip of it tonight, by Dr. Berry. And if you guys don't know Dr. Ken Berry, you need to go and look up his channel. Like, Dr. Ken Berry is one of the amazing, good doctors in the carnivore space that's talking about a proper human diet for all human beings. And so he was talking about the fact that when a child has a metabolic syndrome as a child, the damage that it does to their body can last basically throughout their life. So we really want to catch this while they're kids and think about this while they're young, okay? So that's why I wanted to talk about it. I mean, I've got grandkids. I don't have control over what they eat necessarily, but I do talk to them about a proper human diet for all human beings. Hi, Marcia. So glad that you're here tonight. And I see Jean and Catrone 8 and Maddie, and who else over here on TikTok? Fernando, Last Peel, you, Satub, Dudley, and Keisha, and Linda. Tomorrow is here. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you guys are here with me tonight. And basically, we want to think about things like this. We're going to talk about warning signs that we need to know as parents, grandparents, caretakers, aunts, uncles, friends. We need to know and not overlook these warning signs of insulin resistance in kids. So, thinking in terms of things like waist circumference, rapid weight gain. Some kids have a lot of of rapid weight gain suddenly, and so sometimes that can be normal, but sometimes it can be an indicator that something else is going on. We're going to talk about that dark ring around the neck. So, when I was a kid, I had that dark ring around the neck, incessant hunger, and incessant fatigue. Like your kid can't stay awake to save their life, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about blood pressure, fatty liver, and then we'll talk about what can we do about this, right? And so and then finally, let's talk about like what happens when you want to change what your kid is eating, but they don't want to change. All right. So, sometimes we can learn everything. We can work on it. We can try to bring the right foods to the table. And your kid is just like, you know what? I'm just not going to do that. I'm not eating that. So, once again, my name is Robyn Herron. I am your carnivorous grandma, and I am a metabolic health coach. I am not a medical practitioner. So, I always recommend that you work with your knowledgeable health practitioner. I'm not diagnosing or treating any disease. So if you have concerns after this conversation tonight, I'm recommend that you work with your qualified health professional, right? And, certainly if your child has metabolic disease or indicators that there may be metabolic syndrome there, you will want to work with your health practitioner, okay? So let's talk about what is metabolic syndrome. It's not just one disease. Metabolic syndrome is a cluster of metabolic abnormalities that tend to occur together. So there are 5 major things that we typically talk about. We talk about increased waist circumference. We talk about elevated blood pressure and triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, and elevated blood glucose. One other one that I really want to mention, and I recommend that everyone begin to have this added to your lab panel, and that is your fasting insulin. Because elevated blood glucose in and of itself is just one indicator, but that fasting insulin can tell you what your insulin is doing when you're not eating anything for a period of time. So that's something that everybody, including all of us adults and all of us kids, needs to add to our lab panel. Now, what I want to tell you is that you need to advocate for yourself and your kid when you go and you ask for that, because your doctor or your nurse practitioner or your PA may be of the mind that this is not a standard panel. It's not a standard in your standard CBC, right? But it's something that you want to know. So basically, you need to add that, okay? So when several of these kind of major components occur together, the risk of developing type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease goes up significantly. And so, we don't take simply the diagnostic cutoffs for an adult and apply them directly to a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or even a 14-year-old, because kids are growing, they're going through puberty, their bodies are making changes. And so the normal variations that go with age and sex and the pediatric definitions of metabolic syndrome are not as standardized as the adults' definitions. So I don't want you to watch this episode and try to diagnose your child at home. But what I do want you to do is learn how to recognize patterns that deserve attention, right? Because metabolic disease does not begin on the day that someone receives a diagnosis, even if you are what they call pre-diabetic, right? It takes 10 years. Well, for adults, it takes 10 years of metabolic dysfunction for you to receive a pre-diabetic diagnosis. So I want you to recognize the patterns. and see what you're seeing, because we're seeing a lot of things and a lot of times we don't know exactly what it is that we are seeing. Okay. So let's talk about hidden sign number one, and that is increasing waist circumference. So just like in adults, the waistline is a big indicator, right? And when we think about childhood obesity, we immediately think about body weight, but weight alone does not tell the whole story. In fact, I want to tell you that the scale, she's a lie. Don't let her tell you who you are, okay? So the weight alone does not tell the whole story. But where that fat is being stored on the body does matter. So fat stored around the abdomen, that visceral fat that surrounds our internal organs, is metabolically different from much of the fat that's stored underneath the skin. And higher levels of abdominal fat are associated with insulin resistance and cardiometabolic risk. So, again, I'm not just interested in what the scale says. Have you noticed that your child's waistline is increasing significantly? Are the pants becoming tight around the tummy unusually quickly? Is your child carrying substantially more weight around the abdomen? Those are observations that are worth paying attention to. And I need to make a very important distinction here, and that is that we expect kids to grow, right? Their bodies are not supposed to remain the same. They gain weight, they get taller, the proportions do change. And then certainly when they hit puberty, the body composition changes dramatically. So, I'm not talking about pulling out a measuring tape every week and, measuring your child's waist. But I want you to recognize a pattern in which abdominal size is increasing disproportionately to the rest of the body. And then you need to discuss that pattern with your healthcare professional, right? So, here's what I want to say is, don't shame your child about their tum-tum, okay? Don't shame them. I was the kid that was poked in the tummy and told I was chubby. And that led to years and years of this, what I like to call mental illness, and this cycle of dieting, right? So don't shame them, because metabolic dysfunction is not a personality trait. Okay, it's not a personality trait. This is a health conversation. It's not about appearance. It's not about having a thinner child, but we do want our kids, grandkids, neighbors, friends to be metabolically healthy. So, we do not want to shame ourselves or our children. Okay. So that's hidden sign number one. Hidden sign number two is going to be rapid or excessive weight gain, right? So that is something, if they're gaining weight super, super fast, we know that kids should gain weight. But whether their weight is following expected growth trajectory, right? So, as a pediatrician, if you're a pediatrician, you're not looking at one number in isolation. You're looking at growth over time using age and sex-specific growth charts. And a sudden shift in your growth trajectory or your weight might tell us more than a single weight measurement, right? So how is that weight over time? So maybe your child has always tracked along at a particular growth curve and suddenly begins moving upward rapidly. Maybe the weight gain is accompanied by increasing abdominal size, like we just talked about. Maybe their activity has decreased. How many of y'all's kids was just chilling out, lazing around for the summer, right? They are not getting outside or moving as much. And hopefully back to school is coming right around the corner and you can get back out and, get that movement in. So the activity decreased, their hunger maybe increased dramatically. Maybe their sleep is deteriorated. Are these kids staying up all night scrolling? I think they are, right? Bad sleep. What about the diet? Has the diet changed? Maybe they're on medications or having hormonal issues or other medical factors are involved. So we don't jump to conclusions, but we do investigate, and we do ask better questions. And so I want to say that weight is information. And as I said, the scale, she be lying. And, you can't look at what the scale says in isolation. And weight is not a moral judgment. This is a mindset I really want us to get away from in the world, right? Because we have designated overweight with some kind of personality problem. Like, it's not a personality problem, okay? It's not a moral judgment. So a child's not good because they're thin and bad because they're overweight. And I remember feeling this way as a kid, just feeling like I'm a bad person. I have a lack of self-control. I'm not able to, accomplish my goals, basically my weight goals. So we need to keep that out of the conversation and look for information about what's happening physiologically. Now, I want to talk about this dark ring around the neck. Have you guys ever seen that? I mean, it's in kids, but it's also in adults. You might see it up the side of the face here. You might see it around the neck. You might see it in like your armpits or inside your arms. And that is called acanthosis nigricans. And it is a dark, thickened, almost velvety looking skin around the neck, under the arms, and in other body folds. Can I turn up my volume? Can somebody tell me if I'm audible? I don't know if I'm able to turn up my volume. I have my microphone on. Let me see what I can do. It's all the way up. Let me know if y'all can hear me. Seems like somebody told me that same thing last week, that you were having a hard time hearing me. So acanthosis nigricans. And sometimes people think that the child's neck is dirty. How many of y'all, when I was a kid, they was like, take this alcohol and wipe your neck because your neck is black, right? And it is not dirt. It's not a dirty neck, okay? So you scrub it, you tell your child to wash better, but it doesn't wash off because it's not dirt. Acanthosis nigricans can have several causes, but one of the is most commonly associated with high insulin and then insulin resistance and high circulating insulin levels in the bloodstream. So if you notice this on your child, don't panic and don't try to diagnose it yourself, but don't ignore it either, because it is the body trying to tell you something. I don't know if you guys have seen my pictures, the ones where I had the 2 black eyes and the dark circle around the mouth for many, many years of my life. That was a symptom of metabolic syndrome. My body was speaking and I was not able to understand what it was trying to tell me. So this is why we're over here talking about this today, because I want to make sure that you guys know when you see certain things, certain patterns, you need to connect those dots, okay? And so we don't want to ignore acanthosis nigricans because it is one of the common symptoms of metabolic syndrome. Another one I just want to mention really quick before we go to the next sign is skin tags. Did you know that if you have those little, what they call moles, a lot of people call them moles, right? Those are not moles. They're called skin tags. And they are one symptom of metabolic syndrome, high insulin in the blood, and that. So you need to be looking at that with new eyes, okay? So I want you to talk to your child's healthcare provider and see what information that your child's body is giving you outside about what's happening on the inside. Hidden sign number 4, my child is always hungry, right? My child just ate and they're hungry again. Now, we know at certain times of life, kids are going to be more hungrier. They just will be because they're having a growth spurt or things like that. And teenagers, y'all, I'm telling you, these kids can eat a lot. These kids eat a lot. I'd be amazed at the amount of foods that they eat. And hunger alone does not mean that a child has insulin resistance, but persistent hunger is worth looking at in the context of everything else that we're discussing. So when you put all these factors together and then you start to look at it with new eyes, and then we need to be considering, what is the child eating, right? Is the child eating a bowl of sweetened cereal for breakfast? A juice box? Maybe they're having crackers or cheese and crackers for a snack. Maybe they're having a sandwich, chips, and something sweet at lunch. Maybe they're having another snack after school. And by dinner time, they're still starving. So we need to distinguish between eating a lot of food and eating food that provides long lasting satiety and adequate nutrition. Is the food you're feeding your kids, does it provide adequate nutrition? Or is it just something to put in their stomach because they're hungry? So, what the things that I'm thinking about that are very nutritious, highly satiating, things like eggs, if your child can tolerate eggs, beef, chicken, fish, even turkey, and other nutrient dense animal foods. So, depending on the child and what they can tolerate, there may be additional whole foods. And I say whole foods. If you're going to be on a proper human diet, then you need to be eating foods that are properly meant for humans. And that means single ingredient foods. Now, I know y'all kids is eating them Takis. Y'all feeding them kids the Takis? These kids are eating Takis. And I'm like, that is not food. That's what I would tell them. That's just not food, right? It is something, but it's not food. You can eat it, but it ain't food, right? So I need you to examine what percentage of your child's diet is actually nourishing their body, right? Versus simply providing another highly processed source of energy. Nutrients and highly processed energy are not the same thing. They're not the same thing. Okay. So hidden sign number 5 is going to be fatigue. Let's talk about tired kids. Are your kids tired? Oh, some of these kids in here, it's hard to get them up in the morning for school because they are so tired. If your child is constantly exhausted, we don't want to automatically label them as lazy. We need to ask some more questions. Let's ask better questions, okay? How much are they sleeping? Did you know that kids need like 9, 10 hours of sleep a night? They need a lot of sleep. And what time are they going to bed? These kids, I be up, y'all, I know that y'all know I got this new job. So I be up at 11 o'clock for a meeting at night, 11 at night, going to a meeting. I'm in a meeting till maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock, maybe 12:30 sometimes. And these kids still be up playing and talking and laughing. And I'm like, go to bed. Go. Why are y'all still up and it's midnight? Right? So what time are they going to bed? And then are they on their device all night long? Even the television, they need to turn it off when they're going to bed, especially with this back to school coming up. We don't need our kids to be exhausted from having scrolled all night long or been on their phone or watching watching TV all night long. They need to go to bed. Are they waking up refreshed? Like, if they get that 9, 10 hours of sleep, they should wake up refreshed. And then are they physically active during the day? Are they getting that movement in that allows them to drain that energy out, right? Of course, we talk about food and are they eating good nutritious food? Questions that you can ask is, do they have an iron deficiency or another nutritional issue? Maybe they could potentially have a sleep disorder or maybe another underlying medical condition. So the one thing that we're talking about tonight is whether or not metabolic dysfunction is a part of that picture. Because fatigue, of course, is incredibly non-specific, many possible causes. But if they're not sleeping, that's probably a big factor, right? Persistent fatigue is information, and we need to put it in context of all the other signals that we're getting, right? So investigate it and don't just dismiss it. Does your child have high blood pressure? This might surprise a lot of people, but children can develop high blood pressure. And so, pediatric clinicians will measure blood pressure in kids. And blood pressure in children is definitely interpreted differently than it is in adults because age, sex, and height can matter when determining what's normal. But persistently elevated blood pressure deserves attention. And in combination with some of the other factors that we have discussed, we need to think about whether or not that metabolic dysfunction may be playing a part in the picture, right? Let's see. What else? I see a comment in here. Oh, Julia is telling me that she came from a birthday party with her grandkids and that we would be so proud of them for the choices that they had for the birthday party. I know that when on my grandkids' first birthday party, they gave them a cake to smash. And if I was a parent today, I probably would not do anything with that kind of thing, giving them a cake because it's just a setup for failure in the future. So, yes, they had lots of meat at the birthday party. That's awesome, Julia. Congratulations on great, great choices, right? So, don't wait till adulthood to care about blood pressure. High blood pressure in kids is problematic as well as it is in adults. Hidden sign number 7 is going to be fatty liver. And I think more parents need to know about this one. Because children can develop fatty liver disease associated with metabolic dysfunction. And sometimes there's no obvious symptoms. Your child might feel fine, but it might be discovered because their liver enzymes are elevated or because additional testing is done. Think about that. So a child can look okay, feel okay, and still be accumulating excess fat in the liver. That fat around the organs, that visceral fat that's around the organs is hugely problematic in children as well as in adults. So we want to make sure that we are looking for all of the signs and symptoms. If your child is having labs drawn and there are elevated liver enzymes, this is a potential signal that your child may be suffering with metabolic syndrome. All right, how about blood sugar and insulin resistance? So blood sugar and the insulin resistance is like right at the heart of the metabolic health conversation because elevated glucose matters. Now, elevated glucose is one part of the story, but what happens, right? Because our bodies are working very, very hard to maintain blood glucose within a narrow range, right? So at any time in your body, there should be about 1 teaspoon of glucose, 1 teaspoon of glucose in all of your blood. And we're putting in a way more than that, right? So 1 teaspoon, 4 carbohydrates, we talk about that sometimes on here. 4 carbohydrates is about a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of glucose. Think about that. How much sugar is your child eating? And then your cells become resistant to insulin because that insulin is coming out to chase down the glucose and stuff it into your fat cells. I say that on here all the time, right? When cells become insulin resistant, the pancreas may compensate by producing more insulin, right? So for a period of time, that compensation might help keep your glucose from rising dramatically. Now, here's where that secondary lab that I talked about earlier comes into play. And we need to think about that fasting insulin because your glucose could be normal while your fasting insulin is high, which is still an indicator that you have something going on. Your pancreas is putting out more insulin to deal with glucose, right? So that compensation may help keep the glucose from rising dramatically, but eventually in some people, the system can no longer compensate adequately and your blood glucose begins climbing. So here's where you see high blood glucose and high fasting insulin. So that progression can ultimately lead to prediabetes. As I said, prediabetes is not it's not a sudden onset thing, right? It's something that has accumulated over time. And, so that is a progression leading to prediabetes and then ultimately type 2 diabetes, right? So when we're evaluating a child who has significant risk factors. The conversation needs to be broader than whether or not their glucose was high in isolation, right? Get that fasting insulin lab drawn. And then talk with your healthcare provider, your child's healthcare provider, about getting that entire metabolic picture, um, and what screenings might be appropriate for your child, right? Because it's multiple things in context that we need to be considering. We're looking at metabolic syndrome in children and in adults. We need to get the big picture here. So that's something that I want you to consider. All right, so what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do next? Because you're saying, all right, this is, you're telling me a lot of information. What am I supposed to do with the information? What am I going to do? How do I handle this? If I'm seeing some of the signs that you just mentioned in my child, what am I supposed to do with this information? First of all, don't panic. Second of all, I don't recommend that you diagnose your child from YouTube, not even from me, your carnivorous grandma, right? So the third thing is ask those questions. Schedule an appointment with your child's pediatrician if you're concerned about some of these factors. Ask about growth trajectory. Ask about the blood pressure. Discuss the family history, because we always say that your family history will load the gun, but your nutrition is going to pull the trigger on some of these chronic diseases that we're facing, right? So think about and talk about what the waist circumference means, and central adiposity. That's fat around the abdomen. Ask whether you need to be screening for glucose abnormalities, lipid abnormalities, fatty liver disease, or other metabolic conditions as appropriate, right? We want you to go in armed with information and have a good, well-planned conversation with your child's medical practitioner, right? So that's the goal. You want to have a productive conversation about your child's health. All right. So then the next thing is, what does your home look like? What's going on inside there? Y'all, I'm telling you, it's a struggle, because sometimes we have control over things and sometimes we don't. When you go in your kitchen and you open up your refrigerator and open up your pantry, what's inside there? How much juice, right? How much sugar sweetened beverages? How many sports drinks or sweet cereals or chips, cakes, cookies, pies, snack cakes? I know this baby around here. She's almost 4 years old, and she likes nothing but carbs, right? So she wants to eat what do they say? A coffee cake for breakfast. I'm like, what baby eats coffee cake? Anyway, snack cakes. How many foods that can be opened and eaten endlessly without requiring someone to cook anything? Then you need to ask, who bought that? Who bought it? Because children are not generally driving themselves to the grocery store and going shopping for themselves. We, the adults, are creating the food environment for them. So, teenagers maybe have a little bit more leeway. Some of them are out there driving, they're doing what they want, they going and stopping and getting this and that, right? So, we don't necessarily have control over everything. But with the younger kids, the adults have the most influence over what foods are available to children. And I'm going to tell you something that it's really challenging, because the convenience factor is a problem, right? We have gone from the days back in the 40s, 50s, when the parents cooked the food, to a day when everything is convenient. Everything is convenient. The kid can go and get something out the freezer. And I watch this happen this over here. They go in the freezer and they get something out and they go and put it in the microwave and they cook it and eat it for themselves. Something that's convenient for them. Nobody has to cook anything. So, but we can change the environment, and we can start with beverages, right? So what is your family drinking? Are they drinking soda and juice and sweet tea, sports drinks, energy drinks, sweetened coffee drinks? How much Starbucks is your kid? How about that, what is that strawberry thing called? I don't know. At Starbucks, they have this strawberry drink that my grandkids love, right? It's a lot of sugar coming in through the straw. and water is good for them, and it doesn't have to be exciting, but you can give them some electrolytes. Water has a job. That job is hydration. And so we need to making sure that making sure that they're getting hydrated, drinking some water sometimes. Do y'all kids drink water? Anyway, that simple change, maybe switching from sugary drinks to non-sugary drinks, would be beneficial. The next thing is to put protein back at the center of the meal. Are your kids eating meat? I know y'all not surprised I said that, right? Because I am your carnivorous grandma after all. And I'm definitely going to talk about meat because everybody needs to be eating it. So I'm talking about kids. I'm not telling you necessarily to immediately put your child on a carnivore diet, strict carnivore diet, right? Although I think some kids could benefit from it, you know. And so kids are growing, developing, maybe, there may be some single ingredient foods that could be beneficial to them besides the meat. But we need to think about dietary changes and the challenges around that. It can be quite difficult, as I'm seeing, because when my grandkids moved in here, my goal was to get them on a ketogenic or carnivore way of eating, and it's been over a year, and I've not been able to accomplish that goal. So it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is an easy thing. It needs thoughtful planning. But if you have kids and you're interested in carnivore, I would recommend that you check out the Carnivore Family on YouTube. I think they're on TikTok now as well. Their channel is called the Carnivore Family, and all of them and all of their kids are carnivore. At least they were last time I recall. So check them out. And that is a really, really good, she gives some very good tips about if you want to try carnivore with your kids, how to do that, and how she converted her kids over to a carnivore way of eating. Those kids are amazing. They go and get some chicken or a pork steak out the refrigerator, put it in the air fryer and cook it themselves at 2, 3, 4 years old. Unbelievable. So go and check out that channel. It's really cool, really interesting. So we need to stop treating protein as an afterthought. Protein should be the primary thing. Your kid needs to eat meat. And so we need to build the meal around that. So that is one thing that I can say, is that when it's me cooking for them, the main thing that I'm going to make is some meat. Now I might throw a vegetable with it for them. But yeah, the main thing that they're going to get is some meat, some chicken, or some, like yesterday I did pot roast in the pressure cooker. Real easy, quick. In an hour they're eating, so it's not bad at all. So stop treating protein as an afterthought. Build your meals around nutrient dense protein. What about eggs for breakfast? How about some boiled eggs, instead of a sugary cereal? What about meat with a meal instead of a plate dominated by highly processed starches? How about some fish? If your family can tolerate fish. Beef is the most nutrient dense. Beef, lamb, anything that chews the cud, goat, bison, any of those things. They're really good for you. Chicken and turkey. So these provide complete protein and important micronutrients. Build the rest of your child's diet thoughtfully, right? Thinking about what it is that you're trying to do. Food is nutrition. Food is information. It's going into the body and it's giving certain signals and, converting in ways. And we need to be really thoughtful about that. How about getting your kid moving again? Is your kid sedentary? Have they been going outside? Now, my daughter had the nerve to buy a pool and put it up in our backyard. So our grandkids have been swimming this summer. They've been playing, splashing around in the pool. So that does help. But, are they getting outside and play? Go outside and play. Now look, I'm 60. I just turned 60. But when I was a kid, it was like, go outside and don't come back in this house until I tell you to come back in, right? Go outside and play. And that's what we did when I was a kid. We played outside all day long and we came back in at the time that the street lights came on, and that was that. We was not able to stay in the house all day. Just we didn't have tablets and devices and phones and all that stuff. How about riding bike, playing some basketball, swimming, dancing? Go walk the dog. These people have a dog. The dog don't never go nowhere. uh, Go hiking, play some tag, get outside and move. So, again, movement should not be punishment for eating, but it's part of being human. Our bodies are designed to move, and we want to be able to move our entire lives. So, ideally, the parents can participate as well with movement. I know y'all tired. I know y'all tired. I'm tired too, honey. I'm tired. So, but yeah, instead of telling your kid, you need to exercise, say, come on, let's go for a walk. And that changes the dynamic. Another thing is that we need to be protecting our kids' sleep. Our kids need 8, 9, 10. Some littler kids need even more sleep than that, right? And so we can't ignore the fact that we need good quality restorative sleep. So a child who is chronically sleep deprived might experience changes in appetite regulation, insulin sensitivity, mood. Ooh, when they don't get enough sleep, are they cranky or what? Yes, they're very cranky. They might not be able to focus. I was just talking on Coach's Corner last week with Christy from Meeting Wellness, and Christy was saying that the kids are just falling asleep in class. And it used to be unusual for kids to fall asleep in class, but now it's like, oh, they sleep. Come on, they're not getting enough sleep. They're chronically sleep deprived, right? So, food, movement, and sleep all matter. Sometimes improving metabolic health means establishing a bedtime and getting the phone out of the bedroom. And as kids are getting ready to go back to school, it's time to set those boundaries back in place and get them ready to go back to school effectively. Okay? It's not fun. It's not glamorous. It might be a fight, but it's going to be worth it for them. They need to get their rest. So, yeah, it does matter. All right. So here you go. You've watched this show. You're fired up. You're seeing some signals, and you wanna, you go into the grocery store and getting the foods that you need, those proper human diet foods, single ingredient foods for your kids. Cleaned out your pantry. Tomorrow morning you cook eggs, and your child's like, his name is Riley, and Riley is like, no, thank you. I will not be having any of that. I'm not eating that. That's the reality of the situation, because the kids may not appreciate your newfound enthusiasm for metabolic health, even for their metabolic health, and we have to face it head on. So, I'm looking at Riley right now, my grandson, Mr. Riley. He's about 7 years old and has something to say about everything. And so I'm looking at him, and he is like, now here's the funny thing, because Riley really likes steak. But one day I made steak, and I gave Riley the steak, and Riley threw the steak in the trash. I was beside myself. I was beside myself. How are you not going to eat steak? How are you going to throw my steak in the trash, right? They just won't eat it. They only eat chicken nuggets. Just like I said, this here little girl over here, Autumn, she only wants to eat like a coffee cake or something sweet. She wants to eat carbohydrates only, right? Or my teenager is going to go get what they want from the store. If I stop buying cereal, they're going to lose their mind. Yeah, I believe they will. I totally get it. And I totally agree with you. None of us like change. If you've been eating a particular way for years and somebody suddenly changes everything, you're probably going to have an opinion about it. So you can expect resistance. If your child has eaten sweetened cereal every morning for 6 years and tomorrow morning you put eggs in front of them, they might not say, "Mother, dear mother, thank you so much for supporting my long-term metabolic health." They're probably going to say, "Where's my cereal?" And that is normal. So we are competing against foods that we're asking our kids to give up: candy, cookies, chips, sweetened cereal. Even sometimes, you know, I'm there and I see them getting candy and I'm like, I give up. I give up. Fast food, snack cakes, sugary beverages, highly processed foods. They're intensely rewarding and they're designed to be incredibly addictive. You think about your own struggle with those addictive foods, right? Yeah, highly processed foods, intensely rewarding. They're there to hit that bliss point and make you feel so good, hit those dopamine triggers and make you feel good, right? So, nobody ever said this. Robyn, they call me up. Hey, Robyn, I've got a crisis. My grandson broke into the refrigerator last night and ate an entire bag of broccoli. Who's saying that? That's not the problem. We're dealing with foods that are intentionally formulated to taste extremely good and encourage continued consumption. So then we expect that steak and eggs to compete with the packaging, the sweetness, the crunch. Do you like to snap and crunch on stuff, right? And years of habit. So it will take time. Like I said, I've been trying for over a year to convert my people and they're still not converted yet, right? So, your child does not have to like every decision that you make. You are the parent. Parents have to parent, right? And we need to think about the long-term effects of the choices that we're making for our kids. So, we do require children to do things because we are responsible for them. We require them to brush their teeth. We require them to go to school. We say, wear your seatbelt. The little one, I tell her, like, stop standing up in the chair. We tell them to go to bed on time, take a bath. Well, we don't really say, like, well, she doesn't really enjoy brushing her teeth, so we're just going to leave that out. No, we don't do that. Of course we don't. And nutrition requires thoughtful parenting too. It doesn't mean force feeding kids or turning dinner into a nightly screaming match, but it does mean making effective changes and helping move them toward a better, more nutritional eating pattern. So establish those boundaries for your kids. You can do that. You control the environment because you're the person who buys the groceries. You are the person who puts that food in the pantry. You're the person who pays for it. You decide what's going to be available. So for those little kids, you know, parents have, hey Celeste, how you doing? Parents have enormous influence over the food environment. So, you know, it's not like you can never have another cookie again in your life, but we're not going to keep 3 packages of cookies in the pantry, or maybe we're going to lock up some of that stuff and ration it out, whatever it is, until we're able to transition over to a more healthy way of eating. So make a difference where you can, okay? So we don't want to make them demonstrate willpower. Now, if you put the stuff in the pantry and they have to make a decision of whether to eat it, they're going to eat it. You got to change the environment the same way you would do for yourself when you're making a dietary change. We don't want to make every meal a battle. You know, we want to just go ahead and make effective changes, establish those boundaries, and give the choices that are within the boundaries that we want to give. All right. Don't single out one child. We got 5 of them in here. So we want to make sure that we don't give them a complex like I had coming up. You know, everybody can have dessert except you because you're fat. Don't do that. Don't do that to your kids. Do not do that to your kids, okay? The whole family needs a healthier habit, right? So everybody drinks more water. Everybody eats better meals. Everybody moves more and everybody works on their sleep. Don't make one child feel like they are the family's health project, okay? Please don't do that. And then you need a model what you want them to learn. I think Celeste just said this. Parents teach their children how to eat. That's the uncomfortable part for us as adults, is that Your kid is watching you, and what you do is what they're going to want to do, right? So if mom is drinking soda all day and tells the child to drink water, they're going to be looking at you like, what? But you drink pop all day, right? Dad eats chips every night while telling the child they need to lose weight. They're watching you. Them kids are watching you. And they're going to tell somebody on you. They're going to embarrass you, okay? So if we're constantly talking about being on a diet, falling off the diet, cheating on the diet, hating our bodies, our kids are listening to this, right? So we need to model the habits that we want our kids to follow. So making it a family lifestyle is very, very important. Eating together when you can is important. Teaching kids how to cook, as I was talking about the healthy family, Rebecca and her family, and she taught them babies how to cook young. Like, I couldn't believe that little kids were going in the refrigerator, getting a pork steak out and cooking it. And it looked good and like something that I would want to eat, right? Yeah, walk together, learn about nutrition together, and then you can improve your health together, right? So I'm going to put my grandmother hat on. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need consistent parents. Consistency matters in so many ways, right? Because, we are literally loving our people to death with the food that we are feeding them because we love them. And our parents did the same for us. We provide those comfort foods and the sugary treats because we love them. But, sometimes as parents, you're going to have to make a decision that your kids don't like. That happens all the time. The kids don't like everything, all the decisions. Sometimes love says yes, and sometimes love says no. Sometimes love has to say, I know you're disappointed, but we're making some changes because I care about your health. So it's not your job as parents to make your kid happy with every decision. Did you know that? Did you know that? Hi, Linda. So good to see you tonight. Yeah. Your job is to prepare your kid to be a contributing member of society. Help prepare them for adulthood. All right? So we're not just raising kids. We're not just raising kids. We are raising future adults. And so I want you to picture your child at the age of 35. What kind of person are they going to be? Not just 8 or 12, 16, but 35 years old. What are they going to look like? What is their health going to look like? Do you want your kid actively managing type 2 diabetes at the age of 35? Taking multiple medications, right? Living with advanced fatty liver disease, struggling with severe metabolic dysfunction? Or do you want them active and strong? You want them to be able to work and travel and live their life. You want them to play with their own kids, right? You want them to be able to live their lives without preventable metabolic disease dominating every decision. Preventable, right? Now is the time to prevent that as they are kids. So, no, we don't guarantee outcomes because, as I said, your genetics do matter. The genetics load the gun. Your nutrition is going to pull the trigger on those chronic disease states that run in the family, right? So that environment does matter. All right. So we pass down more than just our DNA. Thank you, Raise Your Vibration, for the 10 jewels for the floating heart. I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much. We pass down our habits to our kids and grandkids. We pass down what breakfast looks like. We pass down what dinner, what celebrations look like. I was just talking about Julia, whose grandkids had meat for the birthday. Now, you know, as I talked about the fact that we have given a baby a whole cake, we need to think about that. We need to rethink that process. Like, how much sugar is that? It's a lot. We pass down how we respond to stress. We pass down whether or not we move. You know, was your mom sedentary? Are you sedentary? Now are your kids sedentary? Your grandkids are sedentary, right? So is it normalized to move? We pass down whether our sleep is protected, and what we believe food is supposed to do. So again, we can have strong genetic predispositions toward diabetes, hypertension, other metabolic conditions. I eliminated my hypertension by changing my eating pattern. And so that is something that runs in the family. It is a genetic predisposition, but that didn't mean that I had to allow it to control my life. So, yeah, we can't rewrite the generations that came before us, but we can influence what happens next. And we need to think about what we're doing with these kids, right? You can't change history, but you can change the future. So I want you to think about that and sit with that, because it's bigger than losing weight. It's even bigger than carnivore. It's bigger than keto. It's bigger than any diet. We're talking about changing the health trajectory of your family. All right, you guys. So you can take a challenge if you would like to this week. I want you to think about this, a little homework that you could do. Go to your kitchen tonight and open the refrigerator. Open the pantry without judging yourself. Don't throw everything away in a panic. Just look and ask yourself, is the food environment in this house making it easier or harder for my family to become metabolically healthy? And then change one thing, just one. You choose what that one thing might be. You know, maybe you're going to eliminate the sugary cereal and go ahead and cook them kids some bacon and eggs, or some, you know, sausage and eggs or something like that instead of that sweetened cereal. Maybe you're going to eliminate that juice. Don't give your kids juice. It's too much sugar, right? Maybe the phone comes out of the bedroom at night. Let them kids get some sleep. Yeah. So we love our kids and our grandkids. We love our nieces and nephews. We love our neighbor kids, and we want them to grow up to be healthy, strong adults. So that means us making some choices for them, making sure that what's available in the pantry and the refrigerator is conducive to their metabolic health, right? So, yeah, again, your child might not appreciate all those decisions that you made today, but in the future, they will thank you. We need to give them the knowledge. We need to talk to them about metabolic health. I talk to my grandkids all the time about what they're eating. And certainly, if they get sick with any disease, they need to try a carnivore way of eating for to eliminate everything. And let's see whether that would help your illness. So this is about stewardship. It's about taking care of our kids and our families and loving them to life. My name is Robyn Herron, and I am your carnivorous grandma. I hope to see you over here in Kalamazoo, Michigan at Impact Meetup and Eat Up with Carnivorous Grandma and friends on September 5th. It's going to be so amazing. If you're not going to be there, I will be going live at some point during that day, and we do take a lot of video and share some of that out. We are going to be sharing the Healing Humanity documentary, and I'm very honored and proud to be one of the many locations that's going to be showing that screening. So I'm super excited and thankful to Carrie and Adam from the Healing Humanity team for coming and allowing us to be able to present that video. It's going to be the documentary. We've been waiting for it for quite some time, and so I'm super excited to be able to see it. And my motto is changing minds, healing bodies. So let's never underestimate what can happen when one family decides that this generation is going to be healthier than the last. I hope to see you next time on CarnivorousGrama Speaks. Thank you, everybody. See y'all later.